collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video, and welcome to episode 217 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my very best to answer them. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comment section of this video. And as I said, hopefully you'll be featured next week. I do have a couple of thank yous to go over before I get onto this week's questions. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to Major Camo and Jeff Russell for leaving super thanks on a couple of videos. I think one was Ask Boss Bounty last week and one was my Cantina video that I did just yesterday, I believe that was. So thank you so much for that, guys. Really appreciate it. Dropping those super thanks on those videos, you know, it means a great deal to me. And I also want to thank my buddy Brad, Rocket City Sith, for sending me this in the post. I never picked this up. I always felt it was too expensive in the UK. I think he managed to pick this up on sale in the US. At least I hope he did. And he gave me this because I sort of helped him out with a couple of autographs that he wanted from this year's Echo base. So along with this, he sent me a figure, a TVC figure that he wanted signed by Dennis Lawson, the actor that played Wedge Antilles, and I was more than happy to help Brad out, and I wasn't expecting this in the post, so thank you, buddy, because as I said, I didn't pick this up, and I will be reviewing it in a future video. This is the 7-pack of Figure and Dan and the modal nodes. So thank you once again, guys, really do appreciate it. Now, with all that being said, if you happen to enjoy this video, hit the like button down below, because that really does help the channel. Subscribe if you're new, and let's get on to the first question. Trowerman says, hi boss, question for next week. In order to help grow the line and to avoid confusion with other products, retro, so long as the card backs and numbering is maintained, do you think Hasbro should consider relaunching TVC under a new brand name? Perhaps Power of the Force 3. I'm not sure if vintage communicates to consumers. These are highly detailed, highly articulated figures. Thanks. I think you've got a very good point there that it doesn't, does it? And they've confused things even further with bringing out the retro collection, having them on the same card backs. One's retro, one's vintage. It is a little bit confusing. However, I think it's probably a little bit too late to change the vintage collection. I'm not saying that they wouldn't do that. Maybe they would consider it to freshen it up a little bit, but I think it is a brand name in itself now, the vintage collection. It gets shortened to TVC. Everybody knows what it is. It's established now. So I think, I don't know, it may be a little bit risky doing that. Of course, the card backs would have to be, you know, the vintage style card backs, which is kind of where the name comes from, isn't it? The vintage style card backs. But yeah, I can't personally see them doing it, but I'm not going to say that they won't do it, because you never know with Hasbro and their packaging and things like that. Channel member Stephen Novak says, hey Tim, question for next week. What character do you roll your eyes and say, why again? For me, it's the Battle Droid, because they stand so poorly, but also Boba Fett and Darth Vader. Keep up the good work. I've got to say, I'm probably never going to moan about too many Darth Vaders. I think Darth Vader always needs to be sort of in and around the line, and I do like the fact that we're getting different versions on card backs and thing. Of course, there's always overkill with anything, and to me at the moment, they're overkilling the Mandalorian. Mandalorians are cool. Everybody wanted Mandalorians, and even the Mando himself, we're getting too many of those. The one that's coming up with the jetpack, that's been pipelined, that is just completely unnecessary. It's just the same Mando that we've had 2, 3, 4 times with a jetpack, and I just think that's complete overkill, and for that I really did roll my eyes. Plus we've got loads of other Mandalorians, you know, different colours. You've got Jango, you've got the Commander from the most recent wave. I just think they've been going a little bit overboard with Mandalorians, and also Grogu as well. We've got too many Grogus. Barada73 says, question for next week. Growing up on the original trilogy, I remember thinking that many of the designs used for characters in Jabba's palace and the Skiff battle were some of the greatest alien designs of all time. However, we barely get to see them in Return of the Jedi. Now that these same alien designs are getting reused in modern media, for instance the Klaatu's, Baradas, Niktos and Weequays used throughout the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett shows, doesn't it seem even more frustrating that we will likely never see action figures of any of these new characters? I want the green and red Nikto thugs from the first episode of Mandalorian and the Klaatunian Chieftain, as well as different variations of the Klaatunian Raiders from the 4th episode. I'd even take a 4-pack of Klaatunian Butchers from the Book of Boba Fett. Am I the only one who is really annoyed and discouraged that this will likely never happen? No, you are definitely not alone in thinking that, and also it kind of goes hand in hand with the previous question. In the previous question, we're talking about, the figures that we've got too many of, too many Mandos, too many Grogus, and then you look at these cool aliens and we don't have enough of those whatsoever. Especially, as you say, from that first episode of The Mandalorian, you've got all of those Niktos and the green Niktos. At the end of the day, they've got the sculpts to use these. They've got Jiran, they've got Klaatu, they've got the Woof figure. There's loads of different parts from those figures that they could use to kit bash up different aliens from that episode. I really don't understand why they didn't do it. We've got IG-11, we've got the Mando. We need some guys for them to fight, don't we? And yeah, it is really frustrating, I'm not going to lie. I absolutely love this name. This is the Weak Way. Hi BB, thanks for all the effort you put into your videos. Watching this show is always a highlight of my Sunday nights. Cheers buddy, I really do appreciate that. He says, I recently managed to get one of my Grail items, the Legacy Big Millennium Falcon. I was wondering how you display your own Falcon. I can't help notice it sitting vertically in your videos. All the best, cheers. Okay, to answer this question, I've gone handheld without the microphone, so I hope it doesn't sound too dodgy. As you can see, I have my Falcon on a guitar stand. I will leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out and pick the same one up. But basically it has some nice padded sort of prongs or feet there, which it fits absolutely perfect on. And it's just a great way of displaying the Falcon without taking up too much space, because it is, an absolute beast of a vehicle. It leans just like a guitar would on that stand. So I'm very happy with the way I do that. Nestila17 says, great video as always. Question for next week. Yakface revealed the Epic Heroes N1 Starfighter. It is said to be $35. Granted, it has basic sculpt and painting, but do you think Hasbro can use this as an opportunity to get cheap vehicles or creatures that we can use for TVC? I don't really think so, no. I think they are two separate lines. I don't even think the scaling's the same. And if you look back some of the previous vehicles we've had in those sort of cheaper 3.75 inch lines, they kind of work a little bit. But if you look at the U-Wing, for example, it is completely underscaled. You can't put any figures in it really apart from one pilot. So really it's pretty useless in my opinion. And you will definitely see the difference in quality between the Epic Heroes version and the TVC version. I can assure you of that. And yeah, and I don't really want to display sort of like dumbed down vehicles in with my TVC stuff. I just don't think it will fit. Aquilish Doug says, hey BB, the HasLab sail barge and Jabba's throne room have been well supported with all new figures such as Yakface, Klaatu, Boba Fett, Bib Fortuna and 88, and great partial tools like Verdane, Squidhead, Velkan, as well as numerous repacks, repaints. Question for next week. If the next HasLab was a Cantina, can you see a similar number of all new figures or just some partially tooled Cantina Aliens to support it? And how would you feel if versions of main heroes were offered as tier unlocks? So the second part of that question about main heroes being offered as tier unlocks, I would actually be quite against that, even if it was like versions of them, such as like, a Death Star escape version of Luke Skywalker. I don't really think you should be having like main heroes, main characters locked away behind an expensive HasLab. I think that would just annoy the community, especially when it's figures that people have been asking for so long. In terms of the first part of your question there, I did notice that the characters that you mentioned there sort of were released over quite a long period of time to support those playsets. I think if you look at Yakface and Velkan, the period of time between those two is probably around, I don't know, maybe 4 years or something. I don't think I'll be wanting to wait that long for figures for my Cantina if that's what the HasLab is going to be. So it is my hope that if it is a Cantina HasLab, that we at least get some of the main Cantina Aliens, or there's another separate way of being able to get more of the characters. Maybe like a side HasLab or something where it's a figure pack or something like that. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they're going to be doing it. We'll have to wait and see. It's not too long now before we find out. A Kirby Mock says, Sundays are great for Ask Boss Bounty episodes. Great questions and good honest answers. Cheers buddy. Question for next week. Are there any obscure characters from the original trilogy which would be quite easy for Hasbro to repurpose, produce in TVC? I would suggest Bossk due to the similarities in his jumpsuit with the Rebel pilots, and if the Cantina rumours are true, then why not Hasbro? Yeah, Bossk is definitely one that they could use maybe Luke's body for, just paint him black at the end of the day. That would be fine with me. And then you could use that body with the helmet as well, paint it yellow, and then you've got the spaceman that's also in the Cantina. It looks a bit like Bossk. So there's another sort of obscure character. I'm sure there's, you know, some of the other aliens around that they could use other parts of. For example, Tequil, which is one of the Snivians in the Cantina. Maybe they could repurpose Zutton slightly for that. You've got the Kithaba figure that could be repurposed for a Barada, for example, if we're talking about the original trilogy on a whole and not just A New Hope. So yeah, there's a couple for you. Yeah, I mean, Hasbro should be looking at this, shouldn't they, really? And hopefully they are. Channel member Blake Kemp says, "G'day Tim, question for next week. While setting up a new display on the weekend, I noticed that the ARC Troopers, Echo 5s and Jesse are a bit shorter than the other clone troopers. Do you know why this is?" I couldn't find anything online, only had a quick look though. Cheers, hope you're doing well. Yes, it is true that the sculpt for the ARC Troopers is, you know, shorter than the other clone troopers that we've had, and I do believe that that was always a bit of a complaint that people had with these ARC Troopers, that they were too short, and maybe that's a reason why they didn't go with this body, or, you know, using some of the parts for the new clone trooper, and they just went and did an all new one. Perhaps that is why. Maybe they sort of knew that, you know, they'd made a mistake there with the height of the figure. But yeah, it is an odd one, and it is something that people have mentioned before, believe me. Jesse Perry 9602 says, question for next week. When we finally do get Baylan Skull and hopefully Hattie as well in TVC, do you think Hasbro will actually give them their orange lightsabers, or will they cheap out and just give them generic red Sith sabers instead? If they go through the trouble of actually sculpting original hilts, does it make that big a difference to colour the blades appropriately? Thanks for all you do, man. Love your channel. So yeah, it does make me laugh about the orange versus red lightsaber, because it kind of goes back to whether Han Solo's jacket in The Empire Strikes Back was blue or brown. Some people say the lightsabers are, you know, a red colour. Some people say they're definitely orange. I actually do think that they are more orange than a normal sort of red Sith lightsaber. I think you're absolutely right. And maybe because we're having to wait for some of these figures, like we had to do with IG-11, and we got a much better IG-11 than the Black Series, maybe we will get the orange lightsabers. And also, more importantly, maybe they'll make Shin Hati in scale with Baylan. You know, because if you look at the Black Series figures, I think they're about the same height, which is completely inaccurate to the source material. So as we're having to wait, maybe when we do get those figures, if we get those figures, then they'll do them properly. 1980s Star Wars guy says, I have a question for you, BB. What is your favourite non 3.75 inch Star Wars item in your collection? Keep up the great work. This was a difficult one for me because I do have quite a few different things. A lot of things that people have like gifted to me that have like Bossk related, for example. And I've had to pick one of those, and I've picked this. This is the Unleashed, I think it is, Bossk. And this was given to me by the Blacked Out Ewoks. Good friend of mine now. He was one of the first people to sort of reach out to me on my channel and wanted to send me a gift, you know, and what a great gift that was. I never had it in my collection, and it's still to this day one of my favourite pieces in my collection. Not only because it's an awesome piece, it's an awesome Bossk, but, you know, because it was given to me by the Blacked Out Ewoks, who was a bit of a legend on YouTube at the time. Still is, mind. And he's a good friend of mine now. So, yeah, I think I'll pick that. Anonymous Apotamus. Another fantastic YouTube name. Howdy BB, great video as always. Question for next week. What would be your ideal purpose for the deluxe release boxes? I strongly believe that named characters' new molds should be released on card first, then re-released in the deluxe packaging if there's an opportunity for added world building accessory potential. I would love the deluxe format to shift towards loose focus collectors with loads of accessories, i.e. clones with backpacks, jetpacks, rebel troops and stormtroopers with extra blaster options. I am 100% with you on this, buddy. That is exactly what the deluxe figures should be. They should be a figure that comes with loads of different accessories to enhance that release, and then the standard release of that figure should be the one that you get on card. They should avoid releasing them at the same time like they did with the Luke Skywalker from the Book of Boba Fett, because they're only going to affect their own sales doing it that way. But yeah, so for example, the Stormtrooper and E-Web cannon, that for me is a good deluxe figure. Jango Fett is completely the opposite. Jesse Presley says, question for next week. The Ewok character Nisa, why would an Ewok who presumably doesn't speak English spell their name with a silent K and two A's?
Oh.
Ryan Burns says, so at the end of the day, how many figures do you need to complete it, and how much will they all come to, give or take? Or if you don't want to answer here, you could use this question for this week's Ask Boss Bounty video. Also gives you a chance to promote this video. Cheers. So this was a comment that I had on my Vintage Collection Mos Eisley Cantina Every Figure You Need video from the other day. I want to thank Ryan Byrne for the convenient segue into talking about that video. So if you haven't watched that video, it is on the channel at the moment. And I believe my buddy Brett Onfet, who is a Patreon supporter, a good friend of mine now, I've met him in the US. I think he went about buying all of the Cantina Aliens in the hope that the HasLab will be a Cantina. And I don't want to quote on this, but I think I saw somebody say that they cost around $500 for all of them, basically. So all of the ones that I mentioned in this video came to about $500, which is amazing, isn't it, really? I don't think too many people are going to be wanting to do that. So hopefully most of you have already got them from over the years. But I hope that answers your question, Ryan. Sai Kaiju says, hello Bossk, I hope you and the family are doing well. Question for next week. I apologise if this has been answered already, but a Transformer YouTuber I watch has mentioned that when Hasbro makes a design of a new character, they want at least 2 uses out of that mould, either a repaint or a whole new character. Given how many times we see various body types, clone troopers for example, how many uses do you imagine the Star Wars team plan on when they decide to do a new tooling? This is difficult because I think it really does depend on the character. I think sometimes they release a character, which amazes me by the way, when it's all new tooling. I'm talking about this guy here, that I feel that they're going to get very little reuse out of that. I mean, what can you use this sort of body for in the future on another figure? I don't know. Maybe you could use his legs underneath somebody that you don't see their legs, but then you could use anybody's legs for that. So the Mythrol to me was like a really weird choice for them to do. It's all new and there's very little reuse in that. So maybe they counter that by, you know, releasing a clone. And then as we've seen with the clones, they're able to do as many as they want, repaint them as many times as they want. And with the Mandalorian as well, as we said in one of the earlier questions, too many Mandos. I mean, you know, maybe that's how they offset it. So not every new figure has to be used twice. Maybe it can be a one and done. I don't know. Yeah, maybe that is how they offset it basically. Whereas one can be used hundreds of times, which allows one never to be used again. RB1313 says, hey BB, question for next week. With all the rumours about the HasLab Mos Eisley Cantina, do you think Hasbro could release a new version of Luke's Landspeeder? Maybe release a carded version of Farm Boy Luke in mainline and include certain accessories like the hat and the poncho for that figure with the Landspeeder. I certainly like that idea. I'm not too sure if we'd get a new Landspeeder. I've got this one here. I mean, let me know in the comment section below what you think of this Landspeeder. We got a new speeder bike, didn't we, when we thought the previous one was absolutely fine. So maybe if they were going to do a Luke's Landspeeder, they would do an all-new Landspeeder. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I also think it doesn't necessarily hinge on a HasLab necessarily, because of course we are getting Princess Leia, and they kind of sort of said that we're going to be getting the other heroes at some point. So when they get round to Luke Skywalker, the natural thing to do, as we've talked about in previous videos, and Chris from Bantha Skulls talked about on his website, are the various different ways you can get other Luke Skywalkers out from the one sculpt. We're talking about reuse again. Here's a great example, the Death Star Luke. You know, I think that is the same body as this guy here, I don't know, with a different belt. So, you know, you can reuse them to do different types of Luke Skywalker, but essentially it's all from the same outfit, from the same film, if you like. And vehicles and playsets and things like that go hand in hand. Luke has got the Landspeeder. I think it's a great idea. We'll have to wait and see what they do. But as I say, I don't necessarily think it hinges on a HasLab that. I think a Landspeeder, Luke's Landspeeder, hinges on if we get a new Luke. If we get a new Luke, then potentially a new Landspeeder could be on the cards. Trevor Bradley says, Boss Bounty, thanks for all the hard work that you put into your channel. You add so much to the TV's community and the videos are a joy to watch. Not to mention the live streams are usually a lot of laughs as well. Thank you, Trevor. I really do appreciate the comment there. Thank you so much. He says, question for next week, with the Blurrgs finally on their way, do you think the saddle harness will be removable? For those who want to buy multiple, it would be nice to have a saddle on the tame ones or have no saddle for some wild Blurrgs. What are your thoughts? I do like your thought process on that. I'm trying to think about the Tauntaun that we got. Did that have a removable saddle? I know the vintage one did. Maybe the TVC one did as well. I would hope that they would do that. Yeah, I mean, it would allow it to be released in different ways, I guess. Like you say, a tame or a wild Blurrg. Yeah, I never really thought of that. But, you know, as I say, I don't really know what it's going to be. I'm really intrigued to see what this Blurrg's going to look like. I hope they do it justice. And yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm pretty sure it'll get revealed soon. It's been pipelined a while now, hasn't it? So hopefully it's not too far away. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. I want to thank everybody for watching, and a special thanks once again to Major Camo and Jeff Russell for the super thanks. I really do appreciate that sort of thing, because of course it does really show that you're enjoying the videos and enjoying the content. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members as always. Your support means a great deal to me. And thank you to Brad, Rocket City Sith, for the Modal Nodes pack. Really do appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.